Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks. We're going to call tonight's budget hearing and annual meeting to order. We're going to start out with the VASD educational equity statement. Each student has access to the resources and educational rigor they need at the right moment in their education, regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, ability, language, family background, or family income. Our VASD mission statement: each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. So once we're anchored in our goals and our values here, I want to again welcome everyone to our budget meeting. I want to thank the board for being here tonight. I want to thank our administrators and our staff for being here tonight, and our community members. So tonight we have Joe Haynes, we have Jen Murphy, and Yana Williams and myself are all here in person. We also have Nicole Affadari and John Porco that are here virtually. Since this is a meeting of the electorate, we are going to need to take a quorum poll, but we also want to make sure that all members of the electorate have the same equitable opportunity for comment and for voting. So for that purpose only, our board members did want to be present virtually so that they could participate in watching the meeting. However, they will not be participating by comments or by voting. And so that's to ensure that all of our electorate is able to participate in the same manner. So only those who are in present will be able to comment and vote. But I did want to call out that our members are here because this is an important meeting that is held once a year, and we get to hear the highlights of our district. So with that said, Ms. Murphy, would you please read the official notice of the budget hearing for us?
Yes, notice is hereby given to the qualified electors in the Verona Area School District, Dane County, that the budget hearing will be held at the Verona Area High School, 234 Wildcat Way in Verona, on the first day of August 2022 at 5 p.m., which is the time and place of the annual district meeting. Copies of the budget are available at the Administration Building, 700 North Main Street, Verona, Wisconsin. And that was dated the 21st of July.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad Weezy, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, and Pete Grender, who is our Director of Finance, so they can present the 2023 proposed budget.
Thank you. A way to lead in regarding kind of this happening on an annual basis. I think it's important for the community and the board to know the purpose of these two meetings today. And number one, the budget hearing, Pete and I are going to go into some detail that the board is going to be incredibly familiar with regarding our annual budget. This is the time to make sure that we've got it on our calendar on an annual basis, and the community, whether they're here in person or watching virtually, get a status update on all the hard work that's happened regarding our annual budget. And we know what's going to happen here in August on an annual basis. And then the annual meeting is again a chance for our community to hear from our superintendent, get a state of the district in terms of where we're at financially from the previous year, get a state of the district from our superintendent, and vote on a number of resolutions. So this portion of the meeting, again, will be a repeat information from many of our board members, but I think it's important that we're perfectly transparent with our community in terms of the state of where our budget ended up in 21-22, a budget update in the form of a refresh or grounding in OE5, what's going on with the budget calendar, our proposed budget, in fact, our past preliminary budget, an update on fund balance, where we're heading with enrollment, and where we see the tax levy ending up before we get some more information here in the fall, and then a brief 23-24 budget preview. At that point, once we get through the budget hearing portion, we will adjourn the budget hearing and then move into the annual meeting. So again, I think for the community members and board members who are with us tonight, as I just mentioned, here's what we're hoping to get through as far as our budget hearing. And certainly if there are questions, do not hesitate to hop in tonight. This didn't exist last year because we were just starting this work as a school board, as a school administration, and onboarding a new superintendent. But if this is a meeting that calls out all of the components of an operational expectation, We are living OE5 tonight in terms of our budget hearing and the annual meeting. I did want to make sure that, and we have copies of these available for everyone who's here, that we have a new, updated, revised, improved budget hearing and annual meeting book that calls out many of the things that we'll go through in OE5 tonight. Special thanks to Pete Grinder and Michael Account on my team who helped put all of this together. This is months of work kind of coming through and will continue to be a document we'll work on improving and growing on an annual basis. There's information at the end of this that we almost want this to be kind of the annual operating manual or the annual encyclopedia in terms of the state of our school district. So special thanks to that team for all the work that they did putting this together. So as a reminder to the board that the board, and this passed in the form of policy, values a strategic and equity-focused multi-year budget plan that ensures the fiscal sustainability of the district and is aligned to student outcomes. Through OE5, the superintendent shall develop, present to the board a multi-year financial plan, and that's what we've been up to, especially in terms of the work we've done pre-referendum. That's related directly to the results, policies, and priorities, operational expectation goals, and that avoids long-term fiscal jeopardy of our school district. I know this breaks a few PowerPoint rules in terms of font size, but I do, as we work our way through this, we can quickly go down this list. Many of the indicators, when we have to bring this back to the board to say we're carrying out this work on behalf of what we pass in terms of school board policy, come to life tonight. That the superintendent develops a budget in summary format that's understandable, that is sitting on your desk. The superintendent will develop and credibly describe revenues and expenditures that is in this booklet in great detail. The superintendent will develop a budget that shows the amount being spent in each category in our most recent fiscal year and the amount budgeted for the current fiscal year. Again, that is in this budget booklet. We'll highlight just portions of that at a little later time in this meeting. The superintendent develops a budget that discloses budget planning assumptions. And we have used that word all spring. Things like property value, things like student enrollment, that we have worked again and again that will be key variables in setting up assumptions with our budget moving forward. The superintendent will develop a budget that reflects anticipated changes in employee compensation. We've certainly done that. We've passed 2 budgets in line with what's happening with employee compensation and adjustments related to inflation and step increases. The superintendent will develop a budget that include amounts that the board found necessary in governing itself. And we have done that this year. The superintendent may not develop a budget that plans for expenditures in any fiscal year of more funds that are conservatively projected to be available. And we have presented and passed a preliminary budget that is balanced. That's that idea there. And we would have to have conversations as a board if we headed in the direction of a one-time purchase or a one-time budget that we would have more expenditures than we would expect revenues. An example of that we'll reference a little bit later this evening would maybe be a fund balance spend for a land acquisition or another one-time purchase. That would be an example of a year that we would do that, but you shouldn't plan on an annual basis. And the board has done this to build into your budget things like staff and salary that we would be spinning off and spending more than we're taking in revenue. That's 5.7. And lastly, the superintendent may not develop a budget that provides for an anticipated year-end fund balance of less than 10%. And we've got a slide on 10% that should hit that standard on the head. So a quick wrap up from the year, and you had an update from Pete at a previous meeting. So we are continuing to project uncommitted resources, which essentially means we will have money left in this year's budget, which is a sign of appropriate fiscal planning. I can tell you that what we'll end up with in terms of a fund balance deposit at the end of this year is trending towards less, in fact, kind of much less than we've had in previous years where we've had COVID and a few other circumstances. And that's also a good thing. It's okay and healthy for a school district to have 1% of your budget left over at the end of the year. You don't want to be in a spot that we're cutting off spending in May and telling principals pump the brakes, no more spending. You also don't want to end up with 5% of your budget left in fund balance or uncommitted at the end of the year. It means that we're not spending our money and putting it towards kids on an annual basis. Once the audit's wrapped up, we'll have an update for the board in terms of where exactly fund balance and uncommitted resources will be adjusted at the end of the year. We're closing this year and looking on year numbers. Pete's team is working on the audit on a daily basis to button up what's happened with last year. Pete, I don't know if you have anything else to add in terms of how the audit's going.
The only thing I will add to what Chad has been saying is that we are on track to finalize our audit by all the statutory due dates and any of our internal due dates that we wanted to make sure we're done a little bit earlier this year. So right now, it doesn't seem like there's any snags in the road coming up.
A reminder to the board and the community that it's important for us to put together an annual plan for really the year-long work that goes into building a budget. Did want to highlight tonight the fact that we're presenting a proposed levy that will be voted on here at the annual meeting that reflects what the board has already approved in terms of preliminary budget. There are many variables that can come into play by the time we actually pass a tax levy on November 10th. Third Friday count comes into play. So right now we're estimating an additional 100 students, and that has been an assumption that we built into our budget. If we came in less than that or came in over that, that's where you may have a budget adjustment in terms of what we've got with our revenue limit. So right now it's around 100. We have to figure out what we get from state equalized aid. We have an estimate right now, but that's released in October. Every dollar the state gives us is one less dollar we have to tax our residents for, and we won't find that out until October 15th. And then we find out on the 24th what will, how all of that will come together. Where's property value? What do we have in terms of the revenue, and what do we have from state? So lots of work to be done over the next couple months. November 8th this year is certainly of note, where we'll have a referendum question on the ballot regarding an operating referendum. All indications are at this point, we will continue to recommend to the board that our levy will stay the same regardless. And I want to remind the community and the board, regardless of a passed or non-passed referendum, we're trending towards the levy being the same. If a referendum were to pass, we would make budget recommendations to the board that we'd spend more in Fund 10 and a little less in Fund 39. But we are trending towards a levy with all those variables in play that would be the same regardless of the outcome of that referendum. And then on 10th, we finalize the levy, certify the board clerk, and send in all the paperwork to our municipalities. So busy few months ahead of us as far as the budget, and lots of variables that will still come into play. I'm not going to do a ton of highlighting. This is in many regards, many of the things that we worked all last school year with the board. It is important for us to include this in the annual plan to show we're not missing any of the critical steps that goes along with that budget cycle and process. A reminder to the board, it seems like in some ways like eons ago that we were, that Pete and I presented, I think it was in February or March, that we knew we had a $0 increase per pupil. We worked with the board on tons of assumptions regarding inflation, what we were going to need for staffing, what we thought would happen with student enrollments, and made some recommendations and had some back and forth. We ended up in a spot where we decided to do a hiring freeze and had very little, if any, new FTE. We worked hard with VAE and VESPA and come up with a contract agreement where they agreed to a 0% CPI adjustment with record inflation ahead of a potential referendum vote in November. We finalized insurance and the board voted on that. We considered an operating referendum and ended up making a vote on it. We utilized one-time funding in very strategic ways to make sure we weren't compromising our school district if a referendum were not to pass. And then we presented a balanced budget that eventually passed and is part of our presentation tonight. We're pulling out just a few slides that ended up in this report in terms of where we ended up with the budget. So this is actually our total gross expenditures that we're projecting for the 22-23 school year. Much of the bump there is related to Fund 39 and Fund 41 related to increased property values. This is in our budget book. Did want to spend a little bit of time discussing fund balance. This is where our fund balance ended up for last year, June 30th of 2021. As Pete mentioned, we think this number will grow slightly. We had some uncommitted resources. I did want to make sure the board is reminded that on every year we're going to continue to carry this forward. This was a result of, I think, some Fund 10 revenues and funds related to the referendum that we've held aside on nearly $5 million that at some point would be leveraged towards something related to long-range facilities planning. That through a long-range facilities process, OE12, we'll be back and we'll present a draft long-range facilities plan to the board this year. That may include things like, here's when we think we're going to need a new elementary school. It could include shorter term items, and some of our more veteran board members might remember this, along some upgrades to Savannah and Stoner Prairie. That the district did pre-referendum some initial plans and has set aside some money that potentially could work into a long-range plan and could offset the purchase of property, could offset the construction related to who knows, this could be used towards literally offsetting what might happen with a new school. As a reminder to the board, on an annual basis and the community, although we have technically $17 million available at a snapshot in time in terms of what's in our checkbook, that every year Pete and I will be back because we still run out of money technically and need to do some short-term borrowing to pay bills. And that will happen again next year. $9 or $10 million will be needed to make sure that we can get by with cash when the expenditures are outpacing the revenues kind of through that annual process. Mentioned this a number of times. Again, this is data included in this book that we are projecting an increase of 100 FTE. We haven't done a deep dive with this with the board, but there are differences between student enrollment in terms of actually students sitting in seats on a daily basis, kind of related to that third Friday count, and what we actually end up with what we call FTE, full-time students, the equivalent of a full-time student. And there are some complicating factors: summer school, what happens with independent charters, what goes on with the third Friday count, that are all variables that actually end up as what kind of the worksheet that Pete ends up submitting to DPI. For the purposes of the revenue limit, we have built in a projection of 100 students for next year in terms of an enrollment increase. Third Friday count will be important. We feel like we're trending in that direction. We're watching enrollment on a weekly basis in our district. We are up some kids compared to where we were the year before. We really don't know until you get into September to see who shows up and stays enrolled in our district. Tax implications pertaining to the levy slide I'll have on the very next slide here. The past few years have prioritized maintaining a flat levy rate or mill rate as a district, which has been historically 4 years under what was promised pre-referendum, and that was 1335. We've stayed well below that and set a final tax rate in 2021 of 1288. Last year was 1264, and our projected tax rate for next year is 1178. That is offset by property values increasing, a TID closing, and the board making a decision that this was the right time with inflation up, property values up, to back away a little bit from the premise of steady mill rates is a perfect spot to be. I think on an annual basis, it is a really good place for a school board and a school district to be to keep that mill rate steady, that your taxes may increase kind of with the value of your property. And this was a year that historically we haven't seen. And that if you may have a scenario where you see your property worth 15 or 20% more, and the district made the decision to back off our mill rate to watch out for our local property taxpayers in the form of 1178. And that is in a scenario with a referendum passing and one without. And that is a projected mill rate, again, with some variables that still have to be played out. So all this is ends up kind of coming out in the bottom line. So the levy we'll vote on this evening will be $67 million, $600,000 and change. That will be read exactly when we get to the annual meeting. And the impact in terms of the mill rate played out below, and it's a relatively simple algebra problem that we got property value that's estimated to be $5.7 million this upcoming for this upcoming budget. You back that into a mill rate, and that is simply how much money we gain in taxes on $1,000 of property value, and that's where you end up with that mill rate. We don't know the exact property values yet, and we don't know what we're going to get in terms of state aid, and that's up above. But eventually, this will all come out in the wash here in October. So work we have in progress as part of our annual budget process. We are continuing to finalize budgets with our schools. In fact, just met with all of our principals today who are excited to get the school year started. Pete gave a short presentation to them to continue to watch, to keep an eye on their budget and get it set up for the school year. Pete's team's finishing up the audit. We'll continue to monitor what's going on with OPEB and post-retirement benefits. And then we get a big number here in the third Friday in September when we get to count all of our students who are here and registered and show up on that school day. Again, a look ahead. We'll finalize the 21-22 budget here in October. Today's vote with the public, again, is a vote in terms of a point in time in terms of what's in the levy. And then the 22-23 planning cycle, again, we will review and adjust on an annual basis to make sure our calendar meets the needs of our district. We'll recalibrate for enrollment if things are way off our assumptions in September. At this point, it's not heading in that direction, and continue to plan with our building principals to make sure we're meeting school improvement goals. That was a lot out of me, especially after a day of talking. I thought I talked all day today. The voice is still holding up. I am open to questions if there are any. I would assume for the most part, board members would be asking questions that they may already know the answers to, but just wanted to make sure our public's informed, because much of this was review and shows the hard work of our school board to get the budget to the spot it's in.
And along those lines, I thank you both, you and Pete both, for all of the work that you've done to keep us informed as a board at each meeting. So I do feel like it's great to see all of this compile, and it's wonderful to know that none of it was a surprise, that we've been brought along on the journey the whole way. For just our community, can you just reiterate, the short-term borrowing is something that happens historically, it's planned into, it's not a management issue of money, it's more a factor of timing of school budgets. Is that, and this is something that almost every school district does.
Yeah, the majority of school districts in the state have to borrow money on a short-term basis. And Pete can speak to the timelines. I think we get our hands on the money for a matter of months, pay a small interest rate, and then pay that interest. We would need to carry comfortably, because we wouldn't want to miss a payroll, another $10 million in fund balance to be able to carry the books through the year. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we borrowed $9.5 million this year to make sure that we had enough, which we probably could have got away with closer to 8.75 or 9 million, but either way, somewhere around $9 to $10 million more is what we would need to be comfortable with making sure we can pay all of our bills.
And it's more of a factor of the budget cycle starting with an annual cycle and the school running, like fiscal year and the school year don't match.
We get a large portion of our revenues in August after the school year had already ended. So all of the salaries that we paid and our debt payment and all of that, we actually get a good portion of that money after the year has ended and we're already into the next year.
Thank you for clarifying.
So that's what we end up with the issue. So.
Yeah, unlike a typical employer where you may get paid once a month or once every 2 weeks, Pete gets big chunks of money at random times throughout the school. So there are times we're carrying much more than that $17 million in our checking account, but also times during the fiscal year that we are running $10 million short. So and that can continue to be a board discussion. It certainly falls within an OE that school boards and district administration and communities have to eventually get comfortable with where they land fund balance. Under 10%, you guys set that policy. That's starting to be uncomfortable. Our fund balance should be a rainy day fund in the event that we have a budget surprise and we've got money left behind. But you start to actually tip scales that what's the benefit of carrying $30 million in our fund balance, knowing that we could have been spending that money along the annual budget process, and are we comfortable with some modest expenses for short-term borrowing and not carrying that huge expense in the debt book?
Thanks for clarifying. I appreciate it.
Yep,
I know
absolutely.
that's been a question. I don't necessarily understand why there's a need for short-term borrowing, but it's historically always been that way that we've.
Incredibly common. Great question, though.
Any other questions from either the board or the community? Okay. Hearing none, we can go ahead and adjourn this portion of the budget hearing. And I'm going to call to order our annual meeting. Again, we have, Jen, would you go ahead and read the official notice of the annual meeting?
I will. Notice is hereby given to the qualified electors of the Verona Area School District, Dane County, that the annual meeting for the transaction of business of said district will be held at the Verona Area High School, 234 Wildcat Way in Verona on the first day of August, 2022, immediately following the budget hearing, which begins at 5 p.m. And that was also dated the 21st of July, 2022.
Thank you so much. Okay, so again, this is a meeting that is the meeting of a general electorate. It's not a typical board meeting. It's a meeting that anyone who is a resident of the Verona Area School District can participate and vote. If you are over 18 and eligible to vote, you are eligible to vote at our meeting, and we hope you do. This is the opportunity for our electorate to have a voice in some matters that typically we just deal with on a regular basis, but these are set aside specifically for our community to weigh in on. If anyone chooses to participate publicly, then we ask that you come to the microphone, state your name and your address, and then after you are recognized, you can share your thoughts with the board. We're going to be voting by voice vote, so if there's any confusion, we will move to a hand method, but our first vote will be by voice. We start off this meeting by electing a chairperson to conduct the meeting. Are there any motions for a chairperson?
I'd like to nominate you, Meredith, as being the chairperson for this meeting.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, are there any, is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? Okay. Hearing none, all in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we can move forward and I will be chairperson of this meeting. Are there any questions about the process for our meeting and how we will vote? Questions? With that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Yana for the reading of the financial report.
All right, sounds good. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I will read our financial report, and most of it Chad literally just said. So I am going to cliff note the cliff notes that I have for it. So our financial statement and our audit for the district will be for this fiscal school year that ended on June 30th of 2022 is currently being completed. It is expected to be done for all of our regulatory deadlines. Our 2021-2022 year-end update, our operating revenues are expected to exceed our expenditures. Final unedited results will be available in September. For our 2022-2023 budget, a preliminary budget includes the best assumptions that we have as of right now. And all of those things Chad has already mentioned and are in the budget book, so I won't go over those again. Tax levy to present here at our board, at our annual meeting. The levy for 2021 was 1277. Nope, that's not right. 1264, sorry about that. 2021, 2022 was 1264. Our projected mill rate for 2022, 2023 is 1178. Our fund balance, the board will continue to maintain a general fund balance equivalent to at least 10%. As Chad mentioned, regarding short-term borrowing, we are usually at a low point in January, which is what our short-term borrowing helps us to get over that hump, as well as our cash flow. So that's also going to help with cash flow. That's also at a historic low in January. That is all that I have.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. And thank you for all the work that you've done. We appreciate that. With that, we will move on to old business. And I don't believe we have anything on old business, so we can move directly to our superintendent, Dr. Clarity's presentation of the state of the district.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to our annual meeting. It's an exciting time as the calendar rolls over, indicates the preparation and return of our scholars. And that's why we got into the businesses and service of our students. And we're delighted to do that deep work. I'm very proud of our staff today and their work throughout the day and the remainder of this week in our Leadership Institute to prepare for our staff and students return. We know we will continue to be student-centered and grounded in equity in our work. And I just want to give a shout out to our team for that, for a tremendous day of learning today and the next 4 days to come. I'm going to do something a little out of character for me, and because I don't get this opportunity to do this much, but we have it's not a guest, she's a resident as well, but she also serves as my wife. And so I just wanted to welcome the other Dr. Clarity, Dr. Sarah Clarity, into our space. So thank you for joining us today. Very rarely get to do, because of our conflicting schedules in education, we are hardly ever in the same professional space at the same time. So if I can make her turn red a little bit, and it's a joy. So thank you for being here today. As we think about our 21-22 school year, and it's almost weird for me to say my first year as a superintendency, but it was I want to classify it as a phenomenal year of learning and growth in leadership, but also being surrounded by phenomenal educators in leadership, educators in the classroom, and our board that has really instilled a lot of confidence in our team to stay student-centered and do the significant work of leading schools. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And as we move into, kind of a snapshot, if we can call it that, of our year, I just want to put it back in the space of things that we have accomplished. And we transitioned to a full board governance model, which actually had our board rewrite each policy in our district. We planned for and are continue to plan for a referendum, and that no first-year superintendent isn't going to come in and do a referendum. And when we assessed the needs of our district and wanted to do best for students, we took on that challenge as well. We're in the process of designing a new strategic framework for the next 5 years that will guide our instructional leadership and the outcomes for our students as we create what we're going to call a journey of a lifelong learner. Some people call them graduate visions or graduate profiles. It is our mission to ensure that all of our students thrive beyond graduation and understand what it means to be a lifelong learner. So that is the plan that we are building that. And we did these things and multiple things more while still under the COVID umbrella. And we want to make sure that we just acknowledge that we held firm to our mission and goal of having our students in schools 5 days a week in a safe environment. And we accomplished that and were successful. So it's a shout out to each person in this room and each person that may be watching, as far as the commitment of our community and our embracing a challenge and turning it into an opportunity to serve students. And so I'm thankful for that as a leader, and I'm thankful for our community coming together and serving students in our work. So if there's such thing as giving yourself a round of applause, I would ask that you do that, because you deserve it. So as we're moving forward, and our focus is shifting to literally and figuratively charting our path forward. Before I talk a little bit about what that means, I want to take a quick step in history. And we spent last year in a space where we call a time of healing. And I want to acknowledge that just because the calendar turned August 1st doesn't mean the healing ended. And we were all in this all of a sudden in a great space. We understand that the healing process does not have an endpoint, but we are committed to strategies that will allow us to continue to heal as a community in multiple facets. And part of that work is really having intentional spaces of collaboration where we as educators and educational leaders as well don't feel this sense of isolation where you have to do the work by yourself. We do our best work when we're with peers and we're able to collaborate in meaningful and thoughtful ways. And that sense of pride and be able to work around students and student outcomes with another person is in essence part of the healing process as well. So as we think about charting our path forward, we have created what we're calling a North Star. And our North Star is grounded in a district-wide goal to prepare all learners to thrive in a diverse global society. Students and staff will utilize the power of collaboration to center disciplinary literacy across every learning environment. So we want to lift up disciplinary literacy and what that means for us, and also give the same message that we gave to our leaders this morning. When you think about the history of education in our nation, while we've done some phenomenal things, we also have some burdens to bear of things that were intentionally taken away from some in our society and illegal to embrace. And some of those things were literacy and literacy outcomes. And we know that just because laws change, feelings didn't necessarily always change. And so we need to make sure that we're embracing the work and understanding that to close opportunity gaps that have existed, we have to be very intentional in making disciplinary literacy a key component of our work, knowing that that skill set is what will allow every student to thrive in our most diverse global society that has ever existed. And so we are taking on that challenge, but leaning into it as more of a challenge, is a moral obligation for every student to be literate in our organization. And that is the people that you will see in our classrooms. Those are the people that you see in front of you now, people that are committed to that moral obligation around literacy and what that means for each student. So I'm just going to pause there for a second if there's any questions around literacy or the collaboration process, but I want everyone to be fully ingrained in what our staff, students, and leaders will be working on this year, because there's 100 things that are important. This is the priority, and this is the thing that we'll be doing this year. This is our board or our Christian crowd. So as I've mentioned, the current strategic framework expires at the end of 2030. So we have begun the process, and I'm thankful to some of our board members that are taking on that with us, of developing our new strategic framework that will take us to the year 2028, which seems a long ways away, but I would imagine that people thought 2023 was going to be a long ways away, and it's already right on the corner. And as we think about our strategic framework and development of a journey of a lifelong learner, it is so incumbent that we use the voices of our students, our community, and our staff to develop what our strategies should be, what our goals should look like, and really think of those in an innovative fashion. And I've challenged the team, and I know we will not produce the same strategic framework. And I just need to name that if it looks traditional, then we probably haven't challenged ourselves well enough to go deeper in our thinking. So we're excited about what this means. We're excited to engage with our public in an authentic manner to really get the voices of our community and see that voice resonate in our strategic framework. We want a framework that is usable and that our staff can be committed to, and then have clear metrics of how we execute that plan. I'm happy that our Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services, Dr. Angela Hawkins, will be leading that work. We're completely confident in her and her team, but she has recognized, and we all recognize it as a community effort. And we are very proud to do this work under her leadership. So thank you, Dr. Hawkins, for leading that charge. Did I ever tell anybody how I hate to having that thing over my head? I have to look backwards. But we'll figure that out next time. For our concurrent work, you heard me talk about our leadership institute that we're currently engaging in. We have spent last year and are continuing this year into the continuous improvement process. The next layer of that process is the intentional work of developing strong school-based leadership teams to support and be the voice of the work along the way. We are excited that we are going to invite members of those teams to the high school and to their professional development on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, and continue that throughout the year. As we think about in each building, approximately 15 or so additional voices that will inform leadership moves and inform professional development, and allow the experts that produce magic in their classrooms every day to have a voice in their work. That's something that's going to be powerful for our organization moving forward. So we're excited for what that means. We're excited for how that will enhance our continued improvement process. And it's a commitment to what we said last year. We committed to continuous improvement through a year of action. And the next step would be school-based leadership teams. And so now you see the bigger instructional design come to life with those teams this year. An additional, I'm not going to call it a challenge, opportunity that we took on was when I took the position as a superintendent of Verona Area School District. We talked about how do we create intentional spaces for multiple voices. And we did that in the form of advisory groups. We have 3 different advisory groups that report directly to me as a leader. And they come in the form of a family or parent advisory group, a staff advisory group, and a student advisory group. And you see that smile that every time I say the student advisory group, because those are my scholars, those are my babies. And we get to return the vast majority of them this year. And we have we had 2 outstanding graduates that are going to tear it up in society because they're and we're going to do whatever it takes to get them back here in our space so they can continue to lead in our community. But I put that picture up here and the opportunity to talk about it. I just wanted to be happy for a while, and I love the numbers, and I'm glad we're not bankrupt and all that stuff. But we do this for the students, and that if you ever get a chance to engage with a group of students that inform your decision making, take it up or just have some conversations. They are the most authentic, truthful, and will tell you anything that's on their mind. And I'm almost known this group of people that you can imagine, and they're right. they're always right. They know what they need to thrive in our school, and they produce a wonderful result. So I'd like to thank Mrs. Stanley, who's helped me organize those groups. Wait, that Mr. Stanley. Mrs. Stanley, thank you so much. Her and Rhiannon have done a wonderful job of helping me coordinate the voices of youth. We have great representation across multiple demographics in those teams, and that speaks for our staff advisory and our parent advisory as well. So. With that, I'm going to turn it over to questions from our board. And again, I want to thank you for being partners with me and being just phenomenal leaders. And I know trust is not something that's earned, but I felt like you truly trusted me to do the work of a superintendent. You trusted me to hire a phenomenal team and develop team members that were already here. And our students, we see the progress, and we're looking forward to showing you evidence of the product of their progress and results, policies, operations, policies moving forward. So I'm going to close with that, or else I'll start talking about students all day, and I'm not going to shut up. And just see if you have any questions for me at this time.
First of all, I want to say thank you. As a first year of superintendency, I don't know that you anticipated COVID. You talk about a referendum coming as a surprise, but COVID, it was a referendum. It's starting a strategic plan. And then we also completely redid our policies. It was a lot to be a lot of change. And I really appreciate how you've navigated that change and helped us keep students at the front. That's the most important part. So I appreciate all the work you put in and all the work that your team has helped move forward for us, because it's really in the service of students, and that's why we're all here. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to my team. You're phenomenal group.
I think I'll just add, based on the comment you sort of left us with about how the gratitude of us entrusting you to do your work. And I, at least from my vantage point, feel like that trust was easily reflected because of how hard you worked with all the things Meredith just mentioned on earning the trust of those in the district. So by creating these groups, by connecting with families, with staff, with students, how hard you worked to build the trust of all the stakeholders around you with all the logistical work that goes into this role. So I think the trust on our part, it was just a way to reciprocate what we saw you doing in terms of that work. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Are there any other comments or questions from the board or from the community? Okay, hearing.
Is everybody looking at Sarah to give me a tough question?
Sarah, this is your opportunity. With that, we do have some of our board business. We have some of our resolutions that we need to take care of. So starting with resolution A, I'm going to read the resolution, then ask for a motion and a second. That can come from the board. It can come from any resident, any voter. And then again, when we vote, it'll be all electors who are able to vote in VASD are, we hope will vote. And again, by voice, it'll be voice vote unless we need clarification. So our resolution A, this is always one that I think is an awkward one to start with. I'm just going to editorialize for a little bit here. It's fixing the salaries of school board members, but I'll tell you, there's not a single person sitting at this board table who's doing this for a salary. It's obviously doing this because, right? It's doing it because we truly care about the direction of this district and truly care about the students and want the best for our students and our staff and our community. And with that said, I do want to clarify that the resolution is to keep salaries the same, static. We are not doing any increases for school board, especially in the type of fiscal environment that we're in. So resolution A states, be it resolved that the salaries of the school board for the 2022-23 school year be established as $4,234 for all members. Before we move on to a motion in a second, we have moved to a previously in the past, different positions had different salary schedules. Several years ago, we recognized that each board member is bringing their talents to the table, and really each board member is valued equally. We are a board. We only operate as a board. We do not operate as individuals. So because of that, we did move to have salaries equalized across all board members to recognize that each board member's talents are valued equally, and we expect equal participation and use of our individual talents to benefit our district. So, okay, I'm done editorializing on that. The resolution is out there. Is there a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Yana. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Joe. With that, we will go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of approving resolution A as stated, signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Signify with nay. Resolution A has passed. Thank you so much. We'll move on to resolution B, adding to the capital fund. Be it resolved that there be levied for the 2022-23 fiscal year a tax in the amount of $500,000 on all taxable property in the Verona Area School District to be deposited into the segregated capital fund. Is there a motion to approve Resolution A or Resolution B? Apologize.
So moved.
I have a motion from Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Nana. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Signify with nay. Resolution B has passed as stated. Resolution C, adopt the tax levy. Be it resolved that there be levied a tax in the amount, oh gosh, when we get to these numbers, I'd always have to choke a little bit. Like, ooh, that's a lot of commas. Okay. Be it resolved that there be levied a tax in the amount of $67,625,269 upon all taxable property in the Verona Area School District for the purpose of paying employee salaries and meeting other necessary expenses to operate and maintain the district schools, and to finance the debt service and capital outlay of the said district on the basis of the approved budget for the 2022-23 fiscal year. That was a mouthful. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So,
I have a motion from Yana. Is there a second?
second.
I have a second from Jen. All in favor of approving Resolution C to adopt the tax levy signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify with nay. Resolution C has been approved. There's only a few more of these, so we're almost done. Resolution D, approve sale of district equipment. Resolution D reads, be it resolved that the school district be allowed to sell equipment that is deemed as disposable equipment by the district. Is there a motion to approve Resolution D?
So moved.
I have a motion from Yana. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Jen. All in favor of approving Resolution D to approve sale of district equipment signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify with nay. Resolution D has been approved. Two more. Resolution E, short-term borrowing, and as we discussed this earlier. So be it resolved that the Verona Area School District be authorized to borrow money short-term for operating expenses if needed. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion from Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Yana. All in favor of approving Resolution E, short-term borrowing, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed signify with nay. Resolution E for short-term borrowing has been approved. Last one. Resolution F, annual meeting date and time. This is probably the most controversial one we have, actually. Be it resolved that the date of the 2023-24 annual meeting be set for a date to be determined by the board at a future time. And typically, we set the date to be one of the first few meetings in August, but we are not firmly setting it at this time. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
A motion from Jen. Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Joe. All in favor of approving Resolution F, annual meeting date and time, signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, signify with nay. Resolution F has been approved. Okay, so that will conclude our 2022-23 annual meeting. So thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Thank you for being here as we kind of start off the next school year and close out our last school year. So thank you everyone for your work and for your time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion from Joe, second,
Second.
a second from Jen. All in favor of adjourning signify with aye.
Aye.